So we now have more details about the mass shooting at the St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where 4 people were murdered by a gunman who then took his own life. According to the Tulsa police, the gunman targeted a doctor who'd recently performed back surgery on him, who the gunman blamed for his ongoing pain. He shot and killed that doctor, a man named Preston Phillips, as well as another doctor, Stephanie Hewson, a receptionist named Amanda Glenn, and a patient, William Love. And crucially, once again, it is an example of the devastation wrought by easy access to a weapon meant to maim and kill. The gunman purchased the AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle he used in the shooting at 2 p.m. yesterday, just hours before he went to the hospital to carry out the attack, which began shortly before 5 p.m. He was also armed with a semi-automatic pistol that he bought from a pawn shop over the weekend. Both purchases completely legal under Oklahoma law. That was also the case with the gunman in Uvalde, who purchased his first weapon practically the moment it became legal to do so in the state of Texas. He brought one AR rifle the day after his 18th birthday, a second a few days later. He used both of those weapons of war at Robb Elementary School the following week to kill 19 children and 2 teachers. And in the wake of these 2 horrors, I think it can be easy to wonder, what is the point of trying to change anything? I mean, especially considering the sheer scale, the sheer number of guns in this country. We have 120 guns for every 100 Americans. It's off the charts completely as compared to every other country on earth. Nothing like it anywhere in the whole big wide world. Now, some on the right have said, well, too late to do anything now, which is just triumphantly disingenuous, sadistic thing to say, having produced a society with this many guns. So the question is, well, what good would it do if we were to implement some small marginal changes, small ways of creating friction in the process to purchase a gun in this country or to get your hands on one? In the case of the shooter in Tulsa, what if he had to file paperwork to buy that gun yesterday? What if he had to wait 24 hours? What if he couldn't take it out of the shop with him that afternoon? Then what would have happened? We don't know, of course. There's a chance it would have been a better outcome than what happened. In fact, contrary to the many gun fetishists who argue this, that there is nothing you can do to stop someone intent on doing harm, we know that even little bits of friction can do a lot of good in all kinds of situations. Like when you go to the drugstore to buy pseudoephedrine, and you have to go through some hoops, and the medicine is kept behind the pharmacy counter. There's a limit on how much you can buy each month. You have to show photo ID. And those rules are in place for a reason. Pseudoephedrine can be used to make harmful illegal drugs. There's some evidence the regulations in place since 2006 may be responsible for a drop in illicit drug users of that drug. A more precise analog might be the suicide prevention nets currently being installed on the Golden Gate Bridge. It's been a multi-year project, controversial at times. It's a simple tool. It's just a small impediment designed to save lives in a place where nearly 1,800 people have jumped to their death. And the netting has been proven to be effective in many other locations. And studies show that, quote, 9 out of 10 people who attempt suicide and survive will not go on to die by suicide at a later date. As this Harvard article puts it, suicidal crises are often short-lived. For the vast majority of people, that moment of crisis passes when they would actually do themselves harm. And of course, in other contexts, Republicans appreciate the power of small impediments. I am definitely not the first person to point out how fond they are of inducing friction and hassle in the context of women's reproductive rights. They have tried to come up with as many impediments as possible to secure an abortion, from waiting periods to mandatory ultrasounds to little mandatory monologues the governor has to give you, the doctor has to give you, to closing clinics. And also, I'm not the first person to point this out, notice how they never say, well, if a woman really intends to have an abortion, she'll do it anyway. Laws can't stop her. Also, we have implemented gun safety laws before. Several states have red flag laws on the books that allow the government to temporarily take firearms from a person who may be dangerous to themselves or others. Several states also require permits to buy or carry guns and background checks and waiting periods before purchasing them. And in years past, some Republicans have even supported these measures, including Ronald Reagan, who shockingly came out in favor of the Brady Bill in 1991.
Surprise, Ronald Reagan endorses a federal gun control bill.
He looked and sounded like the Ronald Reagan of old, but what he said was far from it. This darling of the gun lobby endorsing a gun control bill.
And I'm going to say it in clear, unmistakable language. I support the Brady bill, and I urge the Congress to enact it.
When the Brady bill was enacted 2 years later, waiting periods for the purpose of carrying out background checks actually became federal law for a time. And it had a real impact.
The Brady bill will take effect 90 days from today. It will require a 5-day waiting period to purchase a handgun. During that time, authorities will conduct a background check on the buyer for any criminal record or mental illness. Critics claim that will do little to stop violent crime. Brady's wife, Sarah, has devoted the last 7 years to getting the bill passed.
It will begin to make a difference. It will begin to save lives.
In 4 states that already have waiting periods to buy handguns, that seems to be true. 47,000 sales have been blocked after background checks.
According to the Brady campaign, background checks have made a big difference in the nearly 30 years since the law went into effect, preventing approximately 4 million prohibited gun transactions. And data show that states that require background checks on all handgun sales have seen less than half as many mass shooting incidents as states without that expanded requirement, as well as 35% fewer gun deaths per capita. Again, even though the scale of the gun violence problem has gotten almost out of control, there are small, marginal things we need to start doing to add friction, to add impediments, to stop this from happening over and over. We have to start moving the problem in the right direction as opposed to the wrong one, which is the direction it's going now.